With 2026 being the year of the big bikes, we thought it was only fitting for us to bring the RFN Warrior Pro out to the desert to see exactly how it can perform. So this bike comes in at 74 volts and 40 amp hours, which to some may not seem like much, but for its intended purpose, I think that is a perfect amount of power and the perfect amount of capacity. The reason for that is this bike, in my opinion, is built for the moto track. It's not necessarily meant to go on long, adventurous trail rides. And that being said, that 40 amp hour battery keeps this bike light at 190 pounds, which is hard to do in this mid-size e-moto market. Another hot topic on a lot of these electric dirt bikes is the wheel setup. And this bike finally, and I think this might be one of the only ones at this point, comes with proper wheel setup. An 18-inch rear and a 21-inch front. Why companies have taken so long to bring this to the market, I don't understand, but this bike does come with the proper geometry that you need to actually ride it aggressively on the track. With a proper wheel setup, you need a proper tire setup, and for the first time that I've ever seen from an electric dirt bike manufacturer, you get Kenda tires both front and rear. This is one of those items where we feel that you have absolutely no additional expense in making this bike capable of the terrain that you intend to take it on. So having all the power and all the battery specs is a good thing, but what about suspension? You always need a decent setup from the factory in order to feel confident in your ride. This bike comes with 9.4 inches of travel in the front and 9.8 inches of travel in the rear. Now you both have fully adjustable compression and rebound settings on both the forks and the shock to get this bike dialed in to what may be comfortable for your riding style. So what I want to do now is dive into the core components of the bike. The stuff that we've seen in the electric dirt bike industry fail time and time again, and it's nice to see that a manufacturer stepped up to provide reinforcement to areas that seem to be the weakest parts of the bikes. So here's a close-up of some of the things that we think are very important for any dirt bike to have and what has been lacking in the market up until this point. You see that you have what I would consider a more reasonable swing arm for the amount of power that this bike's putting out. You do have a 520 chain that comes from the factory, as well as a proper chain guide to keep the chain in line with both the front and rear sprockets under real racing conditions. Another thing that makes this bike appealing to anybody who rides aggressively is the gear reduction drivetrain. It eliminates the need for a belt on the other side, which takes an entire element out of the drivetrain, which makes it more reliable. This is another reason why we think the RFN is positioned well and can perform under pretty brutal conditions. All right, so what I wanted to do is just hop on the bike and give you an idea of what this looks like for a full-size rider. The one thing that I feel is the bike is slightly off-balanced simply because the foot pegs seem to be higher than what I'm comfortable with. That may be intended by design, but we're hoping that the aftermarket catches up and provides us something to drop those pegs down a little bit to make us feel a little bit more stable on the trail. So I think an important thing to talk about on the RFN is the cockpit and how it feels and what you can expect. But I do want to make a few notes because there are some changes that we made to this bike to get it more set up for the way that we like to ride. Obviously the bar pad does not come with the bike, and we put Yamaha YZ250 bars on this bike, new grips with safety wire. So if your bike looks a little bit different than this, then that's the reason why. Now the important parts are how does the screen function, how do the controls work, and for me, I do not believe that this bike is extremely intuitive. You have to do some weird double pressing and maneuvering to get the modes to change. Now, you'll also notice on your bike, your screen will probably be up here on the front of the handlebars, where we had to flip it around in order to get the bar pad to work so we're able to see the screen. Those are minor changes that we made. It may not be appropriate for the way that you ride, but for the way that we ride, we thought it was important. Now, when you do go about changing modes, you have to hold the P and the plus button both at the same time in order for your bike to go into ready mode. At that point, you can press these buttons to change through your 5 power modes. Something I feel is important to mention is that it is not just a quick press on these buttons to change your modes. It is about a 1/4 second hold in order for each mode to change. Now, For me and for others, it may be nice to not accidentally change a mode while you're in the middle of the race. The contrast of that is that if you want to change a mode quickly and you need to do it before a hill climb or right after a start, you're going to need to really hold this button, which could cause you to change modes inadvertently. It's something to keep an eye on, but just know that this is going to take a little bit more work to get you through the different power modes. Moving over a bit, you have the kill switch. Now, I know some races require this, some races don't, and this may not be something as an adult you feel is necessary to keep on your bike, but if you take this off, it automatically kills the bike and there's no power to the throttle. For children or somebody who's learning to ride, this is a handy tool. If they fall off the bike dies and it doesn't go running away on them. Now moving on to the right side of the handlebar, you have your reverse button. So if I want to put this thing in a power mode so then I can use reverse, now you hold your red button and your bike can be taken in reverse with a twist of the throttle. I have had this set up on a different bike and I don't love that it's on the right side because you have to hold with your thumb and twist with your wrist, which kind of creates like a really awkward motion, but for all intents and purposes, this works. It's just kind of funky the way that you have to do it. The other thing right here is just your on and off button. This also is similar to a kill switch. You can press it to turn the bike on and press it and it turns the bike off. The last cool feature that I do want to mention, because I think it's important and nobody else does this, at least not to my knowledge, is your brake levers already come in a breakaway orientation, very similar to the ASVs, very similar to the Warp 9s. If you fall, you're not going to break your levers instantly, or at least you may not, depending upon the way you fall. But it's nice to see that RFN put this special touch in there and allowed you to get a bike with breakaway levers directly from the factory. So there's a few other things that we look at when we start to consider an electric dirt bike. One of them being the full-size moto seat. Anybody who has ridden any of the smaller frame bikes know that not having a full-size moto seat makes it a little bit difficult to corner, and this makes things a lot more comfortable. Another thing that we like about the RFN is the true dirt bike plastics. When people see this bike, they look at it as a traditional dirt bike, which is kind of something that we're trying to do, is bring the traditional gas riders into electric, and in order to do that, you have to have something that they're used to seeing. Another thing that's important to talk about, and which you've probably heard us mention previously, is going fast is great, but slowing down is just as important. And having a true moto-style brake on this bike that's very similar to the Sur-Ron Ultra B makes us happy as riders. Now, they don't have any particular brand, but from our testing, we have not had any problems slowing down in loose dirt, mud, sand, all of the above. There are a lot of things on these bikes that are oftentimes overlooked, and rim locks is generally one of them. Most of the bikes that we ride directly from the factory never have a rim lock, and it's something that we have to install. Now, we all know spinning a bead off a tire cannot be the most fun thing to deal with, especially in a remote area, and you definitely don't want to lose a race because your tire flipped off the bead. So having that little touch in detail from RFN definitely makes us happy. So we've made a lot of mentions today about racing this bike and where we think that this bike gets its roots from, but in order to race a bike with a 40 amp hour battery, you have to be able to change the battery quickly. What I want to do now is just show you how this seat comes off so you can know what to expect before you get this in your garage. All right, so under here you have this little clip or flip. Just pull it towards you, grab the back of your seat, and then you're able to pull this seat off to gain access to change your battery. Now, you may be asking yourself, 40 amp hour battery, that's probably not enough for a full day at the moto track. How much is an additional battery? Well, right now, you can pick up an additional battery for the bike for $899, which takes your 40 amp hour bike to an 80 amp hour bike with only $900. So if this is a bike that interests you, it's something that you want to have a conversation about, please feel free to give us a call at the shop. We'll be happy to tell you our experience, how this bike has performed under the conditions that we've tested it. And until next time, I'll see you guys on the next one.